Welcome to Adoption and Other Matters of the Heart with Terri Odom and Annalise. I'm the producer, Serena Travis. Terri and Emily are adoption attorneys from the fine southern state of Louisiana, where they assist expectant and adoptive families navigate the adoption process. And now, here are your hosts, Terri and Emily.
Hello, hello.
Hey, guys.
We have some amazing guests that we're bringing on the show today. Who would like the honors of introducing our guests today?
Well, I'm trying to jump in and do that because I love this family so much. We have got today Russell and Emily, and they have some of their children with them. They have a big family, and they just had a new addition to the family. We finalized their adoption just, a week or so ago, maybe. And they have got such a beautiful story. I'm just delighted to be a part of that. I'll let them at least introduce themselves and their girls, if y'all would like to do that.
Okay, I'm Emily.
I'm Russell.
And this is Caroline and Hannah, and we've got Annalise over here.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have y'all today. And I have got such an interesting way to share how I got to meet these people. They did not just come to my office and say, I sure wish I could adopt or do something like that. What happened was, it was Christmas time, and I live in a neighborhood where we have a neighborhood Facebook page, and I had seen that they were going to do some Christmas caroling. Somebody was. And so I clicked on the button and said, yes, my husband, I would love to have Christmas carolers. I was so excited. I made hot chocolate and cookies. It was just, I was all over it. The doorbell rings. This lovely group of people come in, and this sweet little Asian lady, that leads the group in singing Christmas carols, and they said a prayer over us. It was just a lovely time. And so I realized that this sweet little Asian lady lived in my neighborhood, and I was so happy to have gotten to know somebody new in my neighborhood. Well, fast forward another, 10 days, probably 10 days later, I learned that this family, Russell and Emily, needed my help. And so before I know it, here we are. It was at New Year's Day.
Yes.
Yeah. So on New Year's Day, they all come piling in over my house. They bring this sweet little Asian birth mom, and they bring this baby, and they bring my neighbor, because my neighbor happened to be a translator, and this young lady spoke nothing but, was it Vietnamese? That was her background, right, y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. So all she spoke was Vietnamese. So we needed a translator, and that is what initially brought us all in the same room together, because we needed to take some urgent steps right away to provide for this baby. So that's how I set the stage for you guys to tell us about your adoption story, because I know it started before you guys met me.
It did. I'll give a little bit of backstory kind of about our family. Russell and I have been married 11 years this year. We're a blended family, but we don't have any children of our own. He brought 4 children into the marriage, and I brought 4 children into the marriage. Ages at the time, 11 years ago, ranging from 25 down to 4. And 6 of the 8 children lived with us full time, and then the 7th child every weekend and during the week some. And then the oldest was married at this time. And so to say we had a busy life is an understatement. It was just hectic and what we knew, and it became our norm, just baseball and school and all over the place. But early on, I had told Russell, we had kind of a whirlwind romance. From the time that we met to the time that we got married was 3 months. And so not a lot of dating. And in the early years, I had told him God had always put on my heart that I needed to foster or adopt. I just knew that from a very young age, and he was on board with that. And fast forward 11 years, we're kind of older and we're tired, and he just was transparent and said, Emily, I don't know if I'm really, cut out at this point to adopt. And I said, well, that's okay. That's a decision that we should both be making together. So I started my journey as a CASA volunteer and working within the foster system, just to kind of be able to, feed my calling per se. And so here we are, and it's we're almost actually empty nesters at this point. We've got 2 kids left in high school and just ready to just have kind of our time. And one of the younger 2, her birthday is Christmas Eve. And I remember laying in bed around this time last year, and I was sad. I was kind of mourning the loss of, I guess, parenting, and kind of cried myself to sleep and kind of asking God, what's my next kind of role as a parent, going into grandparent or whatever it may be. And about 5 days later, Annalise, I'm going to let her kind of talk from here, because this is where our story kind of takes a turn.
So I'd gotten off of work and I made an appointment to go to the nail salon to get my nails done. And I get there, and me and my nail tech were great friends. We chit chat. I probably stay there way longer than I should stay there. But I overheard 2 or 3 women getting a pedicure. I heard them having a conversation, and I'm 21, so it really wasn't my place to interject, but they were discussing actually Miss Terry's name, because someone wanted to bring the baby to a fire station, and they were like, oh, well, let's get in touch with Miss Terri. Well, I kind of just interjected, hadn't even reached out to my mom yet. And I was like, oh, we'll take the baby. Like, my mom is the best mom, and all she knows is how to be a mom, and she can be that baby's mom. So I interjected. I said, well, just bring the baby with us. I texted my mom. I said, Mom, there's a baby. Like, we need to take the baby. And that night we had the baby. And my parents always said, like, we wouldn't take a baby unless the baby was brought to our doorstep. And that literally happened. It literally that night we were like, oh, baby, here it is.
So she had called me, and I was like, well, hold on just a second. Like, I need to contact Russell. Let's at least get them over here, see what they're needing. What is this mom needing? Is she needing just help or adoption or whatever it may be? So they did. They brought the baby over. They had 2 translators, the birth mom and the baby. And Russell wasn't home at the time, but I was like, hey, I promise I don't have any ulterior motives to adopt, but just go with me. There's this baby that has some special needs, a lot of special needs. And this mom was going to drop the baby at the fire station, and let's just see what's kind of going on with that. And so they brought her over, and she was at the time 16 months old and super tiny. She was 13 pounds. And so we met her, kind of got a little bit of history. They said she has Down syndrome and some other medical issues that we weren't exactly sure about. And so I asked her to take the baby home that night. The baby had a doctor's appointment the following day in Shreveport, and I asked if I could just take her, and that way I could speak to the doctor and see really what was going on medically with the baby. And so the next day I went to pick her up, and she flagged me to come inside. And when I came inside, she had already packed up all of the infant's things. So I knew at that moment was kind of like a point of no return. We loaded up in the car. Neither one of us can speak one another's language. It was very emotional drive to Shreveport. And we got to Willits-Knighton. It was still COVID, pretty strict. There was a lady at the front door. She said only one person allowed. And I was like, I know this is bizarre. I met this lady last night, and she is giving me her baby, and I know nothing about her. And y'all are my only source to be able to find out about the medical needs. So she made some phone calls and allowed us to come in. Going upstairs into the doctor's office, I found out a little bit of information. She was born at 26 weeks. She was 1 pound at birth. The doctor's office didn't know her very well. They had to do an emergency surgery. The birth mom and the baby had just come to our area 2 weeks prior. So they kind of gave me a little bit of training on how to feed her, because she can only eat through a tube, not orally. And then we headed home, and the mother showed us how to work the pump and said thank you, and she left. And then Russell came to me
Anyway, it's my turn.
Yeah.
I said, hey, you just can't take a baby. You got to go through the, legal process. I said, you got to talk to someone to find out what we're supposed to do. And I guess she got on Facebook or GroupMe or something and found you. And actually a couple of nurses came over to show us how to use the feeding tube and the pump. And then we had an appointment the following day. But anyway, the next morning I got up and I cried like a baby. And I'm not a crier. Anyway, I told Emily the next morning we're keeping her. We have to talk now.
Sorry.
So I love your story because there was an urgent need and you guys responded. I mean, there was sound like there was some heart groundwork that was laid down there, but what was that emotion? I mean, you just broke out in an emotion there, Russell. What do you think it was that brought it home like that?
I mean, it's a child and she needs a home.
Well, I had said, well, babe, I don't know what our role is supposed to be, if we're going to just be the vessel to find her a home or if we need to adopt. I figured he would say the vessel to find her home, knowing that he said we were done having, we weren't going to adopt or anything. And he said, look, I don't hear from God like you hear from God. And I heard from him, we're to keep this baby. And anyway, and so I was like, wait, I need to pray too. And so I went into some serious prayer, like, what are we supposed to be doing? And I'm going to say the whole journey has been a journey of obedience to God. And I'm sorry. And he has shown up every single minute of every hour of every day for us being obedient to him. And the progress that she has made in less than a year and what she's done to our lives and our family's lives, I will always give him the glory for that.
Well, tell us about, I remember the day that I met little Gia for the first time. If I'm not mistaken, y'all can help me remember, she was like in a little car carrier or something. And she would present, when I tell you, she presented like about a 3-month-old baby. Would that be about right, y'all?
Yeah, she could not roll over. She could not push herself up. She wasn't, though she was 16 months old, she couldn't do anything that a 16-month-old could do.
When we got her, I will say it was just kind of like a jaw-dropping moment, knowing that she was 16 months old, and like you were looking at this tiny baby that was not adding up to what you were saying. I mean, it was just this whole weird moment that you were like, wait, this doesn't seem right. Like, they have something wrong, but they were right. And it wasn't normal, because you think of a 16-month-old baby, you think of a little baby walking around, talking, blah, blah, blah. This little baby couldn't do anything, nothing.
And within the first 2 weeks of her being with us, she had a seizure and she stopped breathing, and we had to perform CPR, and Annalise was doing compressions, and the ambulance came in and had to bag her, and it was scary. I mean, I remember crying out to God, like, did you give us this child to take her away? I mean, there were a lot of health issues that we have been faced with through this past year, but where she was and where she is today is she's a completely different child.
And it was very unusual because she had, I don't know if y'all all heard the part where they were talking about that she had a feeding tube because she couldn't even, she had she couldn't swallow, or was it she couldn't hold the food in her stomach? I can't remember.
Well, so no one knew anything about her health. We literally knew nothing. I mean, the doctor in Shreveport didn't really know, just that she was born early and she had a tube. So we went on kind of this search to figure out what was going on. And we were living at the doctor's office constantly, a specialist from here to New Orleans to Shreveport, all over. And so no, she was unable to eat. She had never learned to suck, but we had to also find out if she could swallow or if she would aspirate or what would go on if that did happen, if she had maybe a gastroparesis, which would be basically her stomach being paralyzed. And so she couldn't tolerate anything in the stomach. They bypass her stomach to feed her, and it goes just straight into her intestines. So it's a little bit more complicated, because every time that tube comes out or needs replacing, she has to have surgery. It's not just a simple replacement, just if it were to go into the stomach. So
and I know y'all spent a good bit of time at Children's Hospital down in New Orleans, didn't you?
yeah.
And that was after that episode where she quit breathing.
Correct. So we found out during that part that her blood sugar just plummets. So she has a dumping syndrome, and that's why the seizure occurred. Her blood sugar had plummeted out. And so we spent a week there. We've done probably a total of 5 about 1 week stays at the hospital throughout this past year with her health, just kind of figuring things out and getting tests run and surgeries and stuff like that.
It sounds like you guys all have such wonderfully huge hearts to take on this little baby girl. It's not common to see a husband and wife and the whole family be ready to jump into such a huge commitment like this. It's such a beautiful story. We're going to take a quick break if we could. Before we go, if you're an expectant mother, please text our expectant mother hotline 318-557-7658 with questions about your options. You can also check out our website, www.Odom-Saska.com, for more information on resources and ways to contact us.
Music City Studios, Northeast Louisiana's own state-of-the-art professional recording facility. Enjoy a creative and relaxed atmosphere with 2 studios to accommodate all recording needs. From soloists to full multi-track productions, come to a place built by artists for artists. Music City Studios on North 7th Street, across from Rebel Stadium in West Monroe. www.musiccitystudiousla.com.
All right, welcome back, guys. We are here with Russell and Emily and their daughters, and talking about their adoption of sweet baby Gia. And Annalise, before the break, we were talking and you mentioned that Gia had an episode and you were having to do chest compressions while y'all waited for the EMS to arrive. That is really scary. How did you even know what to do and how to handle that? Did you have any training, or were you just doing the best you could based on, law and order?
So I actually, kind of crazy, I was a paraprofessional at an elementary school in Colorado, and I was fully trained in any infant emergency because I was in their infant room. And previously to this, I had no idea what anything looked like for a baby. I've never had a baby, so it was totally not my expertise, but I was completely trained with infants and any emergency. I was taking care of 8 babies with 2 people. It was very chaotic. When it came to CPR, choking, anything like that, I was trained on what to do. And I was actually in my car when the whole Gia situation happened, when she had the seizure and she stopped breathing. And my little sister ran out to the car and she was like, Annalise, you need to come inside. Gia's not breathing. And it was like this switch completely turned of my mom was holding her and she was completely limp, so blue. And I just ripped her out of my mom's hands and I just started working. Like, I had never actually done CPR on an infant before, but it was instant. Like, I just knew what to do off the bat. And I was really proud of myself because I treated her not like she was just my sister. Like, I treated her like she was a patient and that I was doing what I needed to do in that moment.
We were panicking.
Yeah, everyone was
we were
panicking.
completely panicking. It's like I had the training and it went completely out the window. And so.
And I remember sitting on the couch because we have a sectional couch and I was right dead in the little corner. And my mom starts freaking out because she hadn't been freaking out like probably 30 seconds before. But then she started freaking out and I looked at her dead in the eyes and I said, like, you don't get to freak out yet. You can freak out when they're here. But right now you need to stay as calm as possible it's going to be okay. We have to do what we need to do. And it was, I don't know, it was so fast. And like, I will say, when we got into the hospital and we were all, because this was COVID time pretty much, and they did not let all of these people come in. That was like a huge no-no. We had this huge room, like this ER room, and watching everyone being upset and worried and scared, like watching everyone hold her, just taking turns. In that moment, I think, because me and my little sister were the only ones here, we knew like, this is our sister. Like, this isn't just a baby. This is, if something happens to her, we will be devastated because this is our sister.
For 2 weeks. We'd only had her for 2 weeks at this point, and she just was a part of our family immediately. It's crazy because we never even had a transition period. I mean, she came in and it was like we had her since birth. There were no up all night screaming. No, there wasn't a transition period.
And this wasn't talked about, but from an outsider's point of view, when Gia came to our house for the first time, I mean, instantly when my mom held her, it was the most warming, safe feeling that like, and you could tell Gia felt the same way. She felt safe. She just cuddled up and was calm. And the same thing with Russell. As soon as she was in their arms, she was just calm, and you could tell.
Well, the mother had said, the translator would tell us that the mom would say, all she does is scream with me. She screams and cries all the time. I can't do her. She was a single mom, no family in America. And so she would just talk about how the baby cried and cried. And so I said, well, going back before I knew, well, we could find a place. And she'd say, no, here. And it probably goes back to that first interaction that the mom was able to be a part of.
You guys, your story is wild and crazy, how this match came about, how y'all were introduced to Gia, and it continues to be wild and crazy even after the match was made. It sounds like it was still a roller coaster ride, kind of getting settled in, getting to the groove of things. I know, Emily, you mentioned early on that you always wanted to adopt. Is this what you expected it to look like?
Not at all, but it's so beautiful. I couldn't have even, there's no writing this script. I couldn't have even thought of it going this way. And to be honest, it's so beautiful the way it all happened, and so smooth and so easy. And that's why I give God all of the glory in the obedience of doing what he called us to do, because I think if I would have probably forced it my way, it may not have been as smooth of a transition as this has been. I think what I've learned through the process, I've met other adoptive parents and families, and everyone's journey is just different. And maybe a child from overseas or someone from the foster system, however it may be, everyone's journey is different, and it fits their family like it's supposed to. And Gia fit ours just like she was supposed to.
Well, I think it's a beautiful story. It's so interesting to me how, I mean, it's like God orchestrated the whole thing. He put all the puzzle pieces into place so that one by one, that she would have the training. I mean, in practicing over and over and again, she could just zip into autopilot and start taking care of Gia. How did you get your training, Emily? Were you trained at like after you got her when y'all were at the hospital, or what?
So I was previously a special ed teacher. I taught in the school system with kids with special needs for 10 years. And about 5 years ago, I stopped teaching, and my husband and I work from home. So I already had some background just with various special needs. And in the prayer time, when I was praying about, you know, what to do, and God, what are we supposed to do with this situation? And one of the most pivotal moments was him saying, I trained you for her before you knew that you were going to get her. And anyway, because I thought I wanted to be a nurse, which I guess would have helped me with her as well. But her needs have been so complex, and the life that God has opened up for us has allowed us to be able, we can work from anywhere as long as we've got internet. So being in the hospital with her has been okay. And we've got so much support from our kids. They are wonderful. It's never felt like a chore to help with her. They're glad to help with her. And so there was some training, and actually even Hannah, she's worked with kids with disabilities. And so it's just kind of, like I said, God was working before we even knew he, was going to be putting Gia in our lives.
Well, what would you say was the hardest part of the whole adoption journey? Because I know you went in cold thinking you wanted to adopt, and then it, like Emily said, didn't play out quite like you expected. But so what would you say was the hardest part of the whole adoption process?
Nothing was really hard. Every bit of the way has just been very easy, like we've discussed several times about how it's just kind of been orchestrated and people being put in people's lives at certain times. The only thing, it's more of an inconvenience, but it was so minor. I don't even, you have to be ready to have people come in your house. And even though it's a private adoption, you still have to have the CPS, Department of Family, Children's Services or whatever, come in the home. And they did 3 home studies. The first one I was really nervous, but then after that I felt more comfortable. And other than that, it's just a waiting game. Thankfully Louisiana, I think, tweaked their laws in the process of our adoption, so we didn't even have to wait the full year. So ours was pretty painless, to be honest with you. It was a very easy process.
Well, I don't want to take any credit away from God, but I would just sure want to think you had a good lawyer, maybe. I'm sorry, Emily, for stepping on you. We started talking at the same time.
That's okay. That's okay. Y'all did have a great lawyer. I'm glad that Russell kind of made Emily say, wait a minute, take a deep breath. We got to get our lawyer involved. So good for you, Russell, for stepping up and giving her some guidance there. We appreciate that.
Hats off to Terri, because I'm pretty sure it was your anniversary. Was it your anniversary that we were in your house? You had your family in and you had no paralegal with you. So you were doing on New Year's Day on a holiday, making sure all of this fell into place. And so we are forever grateful for that.
I was sitting at this very computer pounding out the documents saying, now, how do you spell her name? And, the whole thing. So it was a bit of an adventure, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm so honored, even now, even just to know you, but to get to be a part of that journey, a part of something very, very special, but very important. Also, I just honor you all for being so selfless to give to little Ogia as you have. And I will say things may have been easy from your end, but there were a lot of hiccups that I had to go through at doing this adoption. And the least of which is taking proper legal consents from someone that doesn't speak English. You can't just hand them something written in English. So then you have to follow the proper protocol to have the right translating going on. And you have to hope the court approves all of that. And then this particular baby was born out of state. And I had a very difficult time getting the proper documentation that I needed for our court here. So I'm so glad I didn't share any of that with y'all, all my drama, but it was happening on my end. But that's what makes getting to where we got the day we got to finalize this adoption even more special to me, because I knew it was a bit of an uphill climb for me from the get-go. A lot of new things that I'd really never done before and had to learn. So it was very cool for me.
I was wondering, with Gia's birth mother not being a native English speaker, have you guys been able to have any sort of post-adoption contact with her or her family, or is there a door open for that at all? What does that look like for you guys?
So I have said from the beginning, Gia will never look at me and say, my mom wanted to give me a better life and you've kept me from her. So our door is open to her mother anytime. in the beginning, she was coming pretty frequently. She would send pictures, we would text back and forth. The last visit was a week after her second birthday, which was in September. And we haven't heard from her since. But I cannot imagine the hurt and the pain that, she has felt, especially probably being alone in this country without her family. We have since learned that she's most likely relocated to LA and Los Angeles. I know some people confuse Louisiana and Los Angeles. And so, but either way, my number still remains the same, and she will always be welcome at our home. And I save any pictures and messages. I have boxes of everything that she has brought to Gia and given to her, so that one day Gia can see a little piece of her history.
Well, I'm anxious to say that when we went to court to finalize this adoption, it didn't look like there was anything wrong with Gia, if you ask me. She looked amazing, absolutely amazing. Tell us about her health now. And it's been you've had her for a total of, golly, it'll be a year.
It'll be a year this month. So she is walking, almost running everywhere in the house. She can talk some. The speech therapist, we do lots of therapy, but they say she's kind of shy and she'll mouth the words, but they said all of a sudden she's going to start talking and won't be quiet. She started eating. We were able to even cut her feeds back 50% because she was eating. And overall, if you didn't see the tube, you would not know anything was wrong. And they feel that she will have bridged every developmental delay by the time she's school age.
Wow.
So you mentioned earlier that she was diagnosed as being Down syndrome when y'all first got her. Is that still the case?
No, not at all. Her primary diagnosis is failure to thrive, which means she can't live without us supplementing. She had developmental delay, microcephaly. Her head was small compared to her body. She's got the dumping syndrome, like a hypoglycemia. There's an array of diagnoses. I don't have them all memorized. However, she's doing so well. I mean, we've gotten cleared from several specialists that don't even need to see her anymore because she's made such progress.
I don't know if she mentioned it, but she was born 1 pound and born 4 months early.
Mm-hmm. She was not expected to live at all. And the doctors had told the birth mom that she wasn't going to live, and God had different plans for her.
Well, how much does she weigh now?
She's last doctor's appointment was 22 pounds. Mm-hmm. So
that's a good increase.
Yeah, we were gaining about 1 pound a week at one point. She's just so active now and she's kind of plateaued, but she's within,
she looks like a normal baby. She's got the little normal baby gut and like the chunky legs. Yeah. Like you would never know anything. I mean, you might think she's a couple of months, like you wouldn't maybe think she was 2. You might think she's like 1.5 years or something like that, but she looks completely healthy. You would never know something was wrong with her. Mm-hmm. If you saw a picture of when we got her and where she is now, you wouldn't even think it's the same baby
at all.
Well, hey, everybody, I hope y'all are enjoying Emily and Russell's story as much as I am. So much so that we're going to do it again next week. So I hope you'll tune in and get the rest of the story. And from our family to your family, thank you for listening to this episode. We're so glad you tuned in today. And remember, if you're an expectant mom, you're welcome to text our hotline at 318-557-7658. We promise we'll get right back to you. We want to be there to answer questions you might have if you're thinking about adoption might be right for you.
The landing page for this podcast is odomsaska.com/podcast. That's odomsaska.com/podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on the platform of your choice. We love those hearts and stars. We invite you to share this podcast with your friends and family, especially those who you know it will resonate with them. If you have questions, feedback, comments, please email us at podcast podcast@odomsaska.com. Again, that's podcast@odomsaska.com. Your voice is important. And remember, no matter the circumstances, adoption is a wise choice.